This particular podcast will go over the sport of lacrosse, and particularly how to teach lacrosse to high school physical education classes or in a high school physical education setting. We'll review kind of the basic game rules, guidelines, and an overview. We'll look at basic shots and basic skills that you should teach as part of a unit, and then talk a little bit about some different types of skill drills, some different types of modified games or formats that you would use to teach. So lacrosse as a sport is an invasion game where teams score by throwing a ball into the goal using the crosse, or basically the lacrosse stick. The skills used are basically combinations of basketball, soccer, and hockey. The sport requires agility and speed as well as cardiorespiratory endurance. The game itself is 12 players for women, 10 players for men. In a physical education setting, across the board, you should use the women's version of lacrosse versus the men's, as the women's version of lacrosse is a non-contact sport, whereas the men's version of lacrosse is a contact sport that requires more extensive equipment. And so for safety guidelines in teaching, you should use the women's guidelines. In standard gameplay, it's two 25-minute halves or four 15-minute quarters, and body contact is prohibited, and stick contact is prohibited as well when you're teaching it in a physical education class or setting. Some key guidelines there. Some positions are this: is that the center, which is a person that's in the is in the middle of the field. There are two attack wings or defense and two defensive wings. And so you notice here from each team, you've got two attack players here, you've got two defensive players here, and two centers that play in the center of the field. There's a point and a first home as far as players go. First home being here, in this position, your point players being here. The center points cover the cover point or center point, and then the second home here. Notice these are offensive and defensive players. That's why there shows the difference of those. And then of course there's the third position, third home, and the third person positions there. And so that's kind of the basic setup in using this. Probably a more easily understandable or implementable form of lacrosse is using very similar rules and guidelines to floor hockey, where certain players can't cross the midline, which it kind of happens in this particular realm, or using it more similar to ultimate frisbee and using some of the basic guidelines for it, where players are allowed, or team handball, where players are allowed to move anywhere throughout the court, throughout the field. Different penalties or infractions are holding the stick around the head of another player or waving it, so the stick itself cannot be used to defend. Moving in front of the player, like in blocking fouls in basketball, so moving in front of them as they're running down the field. Blocking the free space to the goal. So in other words, you have to play a man-to-man defense in this sport versus a zone. And so as you can see from the diagram, is you have to play man-to-man here. You can't just play a particular area this way versus playing man-to-man. So there's a goalie area, very similar to what is used in team handball. Probably the modification is for school play, if you're playing this indoors in your gymnasium, using the free throw lane as the goalie area. So no one is allowed inside the free throw lane. That would be kind of a good general guideline there. And then you're only allowed in the arc for 3 seconds without a penalty. So one of the easiest ways to do it at a high school situation is that no one's allowed in the lane, and you can only be in the 3-point arc for 3 seconds before they lose position. And so that would probably be the easiest guidelines for implementing this rule as a modification. Things that you want to teach in the way of skills: the carry and the cradle, the scoop, the overhead and underarm throws, and then the forehand catch and the backhand catch are probably the 4 biggest skills to teach in lacrosse. So we look first at the two-hand cradle. Notice one of the key things in lacrosse, just like in floor hockey, the grips are very similar. Wide grip between both hands. The grip is opposition, so palm up on the dominant hand, palm down for the non-dominant hand. So notice that in this player, the right hand is up, because there's a typo, I'm sorry, in this. Let me back up. This hand is up. Notice here that's the dominant right hand. The non-dominant hand is down. Carrying angle is approximately 45 degrees from the body as you're cradling. So one of the things to have them work on first is just cradling the ball inside of the cross, running, cradling the ball while running. The upright cradle, difference there is just basically the position here. It's about a 60-degree angle. Same basic grip here, opposition grip. The difference being that they carry at a higher angle. Overhand throw. The overhand throw in itself is very similar in structure to an overhand throw with as far as the hip movement and opposite arm movement. Basically in the first phase you step in opposition with the non-dominant shoulder. So notice the shoulder goes to the target here. Non-dominant foot are stepping in opposition. The pocket itself is parallel to the body, so notice the body here. This is parallel here. Second one, the shoulder abducts from the elbow 90 degrees here. The non-dominant stationary and dominant pushes it forward. And so what happens is there's basically the tip of the pocket flips, so the bottom wrist is stationary, whereas the upper arm or the dominant arm flips the ball from the net in the throw. The tip of the pocket then points in the direction of your throw. It's very important if you point that you point it at that direction for greater control. This piece alone can be a lot of your teaching load in a lot of your teaching progressions is learning the overhead throw. Catching. One of the key things with catching is that squaring the body to the target when it comes toward you is making sure the weight's on the balls of the feet. So if you have to move side to side to make the catch, you can. You want to rotate the pocket slightly forward to align with the ball and then give as it comes in. So they want to cushion. So rotate it forward, align, and then give as they catch. Notice in all positions the hands are wide apart and not together at the end of the stick. The underarm throw. Underarm throw is slightly different, is that it's with this one you're throwing from the side of the body. It's very similar to hitting a forehand in a racket sport. So notice that the cross is held out to the side of the body, non-dominant shoulder to the target. You step forward on the non-dominant foot in opposition. There's a 90-degree abduction of the shoulder and elbow to the side. So you step forward on the front leg, non-dominant stays stationary, and you move the cross forward across the body as it's thrown. And so it's thrown similar to sidearm or hitting a forehand in a racket sport. The scoop. For the scoop is when the ball's on the ground and you want to pick it up into a carry position. So knees are bent, arms stay extended, the dominant hands halfway up the handle, pockets placed flat on the ground and scoop under the ball. It's lifted and rotated to a clockwise carry position. Good skills and drills with this is to work on, they scoop and then throw to a partner, and the partner rolls it back, scoop, throw to a partner rolls it back, just to work on that scoop to a throw, scoop to a throw. So progressions and ideas in different modified games. So scoop and carry, picking up the ball from the ground, bringing it to a carry position and running. Great introductory activities. Passing and catching, variety of different passing and catching progressions from stationary position, overhead pass, sidearm pass, scoop and pass. Passing in formation, triangles, doing weaves, other formations that combine throwing and running and carrying and catching skills together. Modified games are you can complete a number of consecutive passes with your team to score a point. Play different lanes or position lacrosse, similar to like what's done in floor hockey. Lacrosse Ultimate, no shooting at the goal, just passing to score. I'm very hesitant with lacrosse at the high school level of even putting the goalie into play. Maybe using smaller goals and no goalie play would be a very effective technique. If so, if you do use goalie play, equipment is a necessity. Headgear, padding, that type of thing. It's also recommended that eyewear is used in lacrosse, even in the basic forms in physical education. So probably big modification is not to use a goalie.